Mom and Dad both grew up in Ohio. Their families knew of each other over the years, so it's hard to say when they actually first met. Mom was friends with Dad's sisters in school, and her dad and my dad's uncle were great friends long before my parents were even born. Sometime in their early 20s, both Mom and Dad attended a church carnival, and for the first time, they actually noticed each other. It wasn't too much longer after that, Dad proposed on her front porch swing by asking her if she wanted to be the mother of his children. The 5 of us kids would like to take a few minutes to share some of our favorite thoughts and memories about our mom. Being the first of 5, I remember my mom loved rainy days, doing crafts, and baking, always pursuing each of our interests. She and Dad, for that matter, were pretty strict with me as the oldest, often asking me to make sure my younger siblings were behaving, giving me lots of rules, and making sure I was setting a good example. Megan and I often wonder if we had the same childhood. Sometimes my younger sibs would refer to me as Mother, but I will never forget the day when she told me I didn't need to do that anymore. She wanted me to have the same loving relationship with my siblings that she had with hers, and we do. She welcomed each of our spouses into the family with loving arms. All she ever wanted was for us to be happy. She loved each of them unconditionally, and they loved her. Mom taught us what it meant to be caring and not afraid to have deep conversations, even if that meant tears. When she was involved in the grief support work, she used to have death and dying books all over our house, including the bathroom. I remember friends coming over and wondering what was going on, but it was a gift, and it made her such a good friend to others, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. She loved to shop in those days, and I remember many trips to the mall and the grocery store, which she frequented almost every day. She hated to plan too far in advance. She was just too spontaneous. And that included when there were chores in the house to be done. She would much rather go off and have a picnic at the park or beach. The house responsibilities could always wait. Inevitably, we'd be out somewhere and we'd be headed back to the car, and once again, she couldn't find her keys. She would plop her purse on the hood of that car and begin to dig. And we kids knew what to do next. Pray. Good St. Anthony, look around, something's lost and can't be found. Mom loved St. Anthony. Probably because he constantly helped her find those keys or sunglasses or that lost piece of jewelry we weren't supposed to mention to Dad just yet. He never seemed to fail her. To this day, we all have a special devotion, and it's why we chose him to be on her prayer card. I grew up knowing my mom was proud of me. She'd always say something like, "Well, of course you did," or "You're good at that." It was something I was fortunate to hear even in the last weeks of her life. My mom wasn't perfect, but she was the perfect mom for me, and I will forever be grateful to God for that.
Among the countless gifts that I received from my mom, there are a few that I cherish most. Throughout our lives, beginning at a very young age, our mom was intentional about cultivating and celebrating the unique gifts that each of us had been given. One example was when I began to teach myself to use her sewing machine to make my Barbie's clothes. She signed me up for a class at the Singer Sewing Shop in the mall. I was the only kid in the class sitting alongside the grown-ups, and I learned to make a pretty dress for myself. Mom loved to nurture our creativity and our talents. One of our mom's qualities that I admire most is her generosity of spirit. If someone wasn't particularly friendly or kind, Mom would offer the perspective that maybe that person was going through something that we did not know about, or perhaps they were hurting in some way we couldn't see. Mom gave everyone not just second chances, but many chances. She always offered the presumption of goodwill. Mom made each of us feel special. Though we often joke about being her favorite, we always knew that there was never a favorite. She loved us all equally, though not the same. Our parents have also loved each of our spouses dearly, and I hope that each of them felt like they were loved most of all. Just like us grown-ups, their 16 grandkids know how very special each of them are to Grandpa and Grandma. Along with cookies, Mom loved to make special memories with each of them. You may know that Mom worked for 13 years as a leader in the bereavement ministry here at St. Killian's Parish. She helped untold number of people mend their broken hearts. In 1995, my heart broke after the sudden and tragic death of a loved one. Although my mom was hurting, along with the rest of our family, she walked with me through unimaginable pain and nurtured my heart like only a mother could. She had gained a lot of wisdom over the years. One of the most valuable pearls passed on to me was that healing takes time, and the truth about grief is that you can't go around it, under it, or over it. You just have to go through it. And tears are a gift from God. I am eternally grateful for the gift of faith that both Mom and Dad shared with all of us. So, moved by faith, I will walk through my sadness of missing my mom and the sure and certain hope that we will be together again one day in paradise. He will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and death shall be no more. And then our tears will be turned into joy.
Mark Twain famously said, "I've lived through some terrible things in my life, and some of them actually happened." My mom and I used to laugh about that quote as it related to her many phobias and daily concerns for her friends, family, and her own well-being. But she would correct me and say, "I've lived through some terrible things in my life, and most of them actually happened." She was right. She did live through some fires, earthquakes, and news of plane crashes. She was also a medical mystery in her own right, surviving breast and other forms of cancer, a deteriorating spine, kidney and heart failure, and severe diabetes, to name a few. Most of you likely know Mom had more friends in her lifetime than we could possibly count. I believe her challenging health experiences and deep phobias had the upside of making her incredibly empathetic and receptive to listening to people tell her about the challenges in their lives. Yes, my mom had many adversities throughout her life, and she was extremely determined to overcome them, but her tactic was anything but conventional. I witnessed this firsthand during one of her last physical therapy sessions. The therapist said, "Jeanette, can you push your foot against my hand?" "No way, I can't." But then she did it. "Great, Jeanette, now can you raise your arms above your head?" She responded with no chance, but again, she was able to do it. This back and forth went on until she was able to stand up along her bed and take a few steps. I would tell her she should write a motivational book, maybe for the Navy SEALs training, titled, "How to Overcome Adversity. Start with, I can't." We would laugh. Especially in the final months, I decided I was going to stay positive and try to lift her spirits. So my shtick was to walk in the room, and no matter how tired and troubled she was, I would say, "Hey, Mom, you're looking great." It always invoked a smile, plus a response such as, "You're full of prunes. You better get your eyes checked. You know, looks can be deceiving." And one of my favorites, "Well, I'm glad you think so." And I always did. The last time my mom and I were able to converse was Valentine's Day. I asked her if she could read the card I got her. It was slow, but she read it aloud. My words at the bottom of the card said in part, "I was the luckiest guy on earth. I have the best mom in the world, a true MVP." She chuckled at the MVP reference. 4 days later, I sat next to her for her final breath. The last thing I said before I left the room was, "Mom, I love you. You're on the way to heaven, and you're looking great."
One of the things I loved most about Mom was her love of music. From the time I was young, I can remember hearing her play the ukulele for bedtime songs, and later she would teach me to swing dance alongside my brother on the linoleum floor and encourage me to take piano and voice lessons because she knew how much music soothed the soul. I was amazed how she could sit down at the piano and pluck out a tune by ear and eventually find her way through an entire song, making it her own with percussive chords. I can also remember how she would just simply sing la-las if she didn't know the words. It didn't make a difference to her, as she was clearly singing it from the heart. She told me how music was always a part of her life, even singing while doing dishes side by side with her siblings, which made it so much more fun. When she became a grandma, she'd scoop up each of the kids and hug them and squeeze them, singing with gusto, "I love you, a bushel and a peck, you bet your pretty neck I do." I recall how she loved to put on music in her car, and she told me that it was her favorite way to pray. In her final weeks of her life, as she lay resting, it was now our turn to sing to her. My daughters and I would sing her favorite songs one after the next. Sometimes she had the energy for a soft applause, but mostly it was her beautiful smile that showed her gratitude. One of the last songs we sang was Goodness of God, and the lyrics beautifully express my gratitude to God for the gift of her life. All my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And so I say, Mom, I love you, and thank you for the music, until we sing again.
As the baby of the bunch, my childhood looked very different from the older siblings. I had the privilege of having a lot more mom and me time, especially when the kids were at school. However, that did mean most of my childhood was spent in the car. It really was her sanctuary. Mom loved a good drive up PCH with the windows down and the music up. and I didn't mind as it usually involved a stop at the closest thrifty for her favorite rocky road. Yes, girls, now you know where I get my love for a late-night drive. Mom's love for fun and adventure wasn't just for us kids. I remember she always looked forward to when Grams came to visit. She and what we affectionately referred to as her groupies would load up and take off for a day of spontaneous fun, sometimes even ending up at Disney to ride the teacups. There wasn't much Mom wouldn't do to put a smile on her friend's face or lighten the load in any way. My mom taught us from a very young age the value of being a good friend and what that looks like. I have a clear memory of riding in the station wagon as she delivered a warm meal up to a family after the birth of one of their boys. I was very young and I remember asking, "Did they ask you to cook them dinner?" And she simply replied, "When someone goes through a life-changing event, you don't wait for them to ask, you just show up." Mom was what my sister and I referred to as a compassionate responder. If there was a need, she was there. My family certainly put her through that test. It did not matter if it was the middle of the day or 3 in the morning, she was showing up. There have been many surgeries that my mom put her fears aside and sat with me on the 6th floor at UCLA without hesitation. But then again, I always said she loved Alvin more than me. I know my siblings touched on this as well, but it's worth saying again. Man, did my mom love being a grandma. Our nieces and nephews will forever have fond memories of Mom decorating the house for every holiday, not just the typical ones. And the elaborate parties were over the top, whether it was her spooky Halloween party with monsters' brains and witch's brew, or her very elaborate Valentine's Day tea. She adored her grandbabies and unconditionally loved each one of them. Mom, not a day goes by that I don't feel your presence, but please keep it that way because I still need you. I love you more. Your favorite.
I am so blessed. Jeanette was a wonderful wife and mom. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in life. The last time we had conversation was a Thursday before she passed. We were sharing some rainbow sherbet in her room. I was helping her eat by giving her small spoonfuls that would not cause her problems with swallowing, and a heaping teaspoon for myself. And after the 3rd or 4th spoonful, she chuckled and said, "Hey, you're taking bigger bites than me." We had a great laugh. Jeanette, thank you for the beautiful family we raised together and for the almost 60 years of marriage. You will be forever in my heart, and I love you.